Hello everyone, this is Dr. Peter Khan. Welcome to another episode of the AskDrKan Show. We're at episode number 76 and it's Monday, October 9th, 2017. So my goal for this show is to give you information that will help you solve your complex health puzzles. And I promise to give you information that you can't just Google and rehash on the internet. People use the same information that's recycled over and over again. So I'm a functional medicine doctor. And so people come to us usually after they've been everywhere, try everything, done everything else. They've been to all the specialty clinics, they've been to the specialists, they try the natural alternative routes, taking supplements. Nothing's working for them until they come to us because we run advanced diagnostics to identify the underlying mechanism for why their problem is happening. And we seek to address the root cause of the root cause of the root cause. And that's why we have success after success. And you can see these success stories at AskDrKan.com. You'll see over 100 video testimonials there. Not telling you to brag, but telling you that so that you can have hope that you can get better as well. So today's episode, I'm going to talk about leaky gut. This is Leaky Gut 2.0, baby. Because leaky gut is a lot of what we talk about, what we do. It's the basis for autoimmune reactions and inflammation. And there's a lot of people online that talk about leaky gut. You may or may not have heard that term before. If you've been following me for a long time, we are one of the expert on the subject. So we talk a lot about this, and day in and day out we help our clients with leaky gut. And you may have heard me talk about leaky gut on the show before, but today I'm going to give you a new, revised, updated version that I promise you never heard before. Okay, it's going to help you tie why do you have inflammation. Well, last week I did a poll. I asked, hey, what's your number one struggle that you have with your health? And majority, not everyone, but the number one complaint or struggle that people are having is inflammation and flare-ups of these inflammation. How do I control the inflammation? Why do I have inflammation? Why do I have flare-ups? Why do I have flare-ups when I have autoimmune disease? That was the number one question. So this show today will give you a new updated look at leaky gut that will explain why the inflammation, why the autoimmunity, how is that related to gluten, and hopefully give you better clarity. And I promise you want to pay attention to this, okay? And this is really going to help you to understand why the problem is there, how to go about fixing it. I want to first send some shout-outs to Betty Cruz. Thank you for watching. And we have Razvan Petrescu from Romania. Good to see you again, my friend. All right, so remember to tag a friend. We're going on live right now. Tag a friend now so that they can catch me live, okay? You can post comments and questions in the comment section. I'll answer all the questions personally. And please share this show and share this video with other people. Scott Bartley, my man, thank you for jumping on the show. So today I want to talk about leaky gut 2.0. Okay? Leaky gut 2.0. All right? So the official name for leaky gut is intestinal permeability. And I want you all to go to PubMed. If you type in PubMed, pub is not the bar, the local pub. PubMed, I think it's .org. If you just Google PubMed, this is a website for the National Institute of Health. It's a government-maintained website where all the scientific research journals, citations are stored. And it's a free service. You can anybody, lay public, can go to that website and type in search terms to search for a specific topic. So in the search box, when you go to PubMed, on the top is a search box. You type in intestinal permeability in that search box. What I want you to do is just look up how many citations it showed up. Once you do that, it'll give you a search results. Okay? And it'll give you like the number, how many research on the intestinal. I want you to do that homework for me and just look it up yourself. Now, just so you know, if anything has like 50 citations, that's significant because that means about 50 people or 50 different research have been published on that subject. And remember, when you publish a research in these scientific journals, it's peer-reviewed referee scientific journals. There are certain rigors and standards that must be met before you can publish it. Also, somebody has to pay these people, right? For you to do a research, if they're actually doing original research using test tubes and get cell samples, I mean, it costs money. So these researchers usually get grants from the government. A lot of these drug research or get grants from drug companies. They have to get some kind of funding to do that research. So if there's 50 citations, that means there's a big interest in that area to look at what's going on to solve a problem. So if you see 50 citations, that means, wow, there's like quite a bit of interest, a lot of academic interest in that area. So your homework is to look up intestinal permeability at PubMed.org and tell me how many results. Once you look it up, put your result, put what you see in the comment section so I know you did that homework, okay? I'm going to draw one person and give a gift, a bottle of something, a supplement, for doing your homework, okay? I want to reward action takers, and I want to reward learners, okay? Razvan says 657. That's not close to the number that we're looking at, so you might want to go again. Go to PubMed, Google PubMed. It should be NIH websites, and then you go put in the search result. It should show you how many citations for intestinal permeability. Type it exactly like that. All right, so on to leaky gut. So here we have intestinal lining. This is your intestine, right? There's an opening here. Here's your intestine, cut cross-section here. And these are the epithelial cells of your intestinal lining. These are the cells that lines your intestinal lining, okay? And then between the cell, there's a space here. That space is called a tight junction. Tight junction, right? It's a space, but it's real tight. It's large molecules like this cannot squeeze through there. It doesn't squeeze through, right? So it's called selective permeability. Your intestine has the ability to let certain molecule through, but keep other things in your intestine, like poop and toxin. It wants to keep it in the tube, so you eventually poop it out. So that tight junction. Now in tight junction, you have protein. Okay, this protein that kind of block that space there, that protein is called occludin. Occludin means occlude. To occlude means to block, right? So occludin blocks stuff from coming through. It's a normal protein that's there in your tight junction to kind of protect it, to give it that, that barrier. That's why this is called an intestinal barrier permeability. And then what we also have is, this is your blood vessel here, okay? So this is your blood vessel. So when you absorb, say, dietary proteins, let's just say you have food that you absorb, dietary proteins. This protein can squeeze through this gap because it's small enough. When it gets absorbed, it goes into your bloodstream, then the protein gets carried away. This is your protein. And that's how you absorb small things. Now let's just say, actually, instead of protein, normally large proteins should not get through. So we may have amino acids, right? Proteins break down into amino acids. Or we may have a glucose molecule, right? Sugar. That's going to get through this gap here, and that's going to get carried into your circulation so you can have energy and make stuff, okay? And then what we have here is also another tissue called actin. So these occludin protein is attached to some muscle tissue. This red stuff right here, that's called actin, which is like muscle tissue, like actin myosin. So what happens is these guys will attach to it, and they have the ability to contract, okay? And you're going to see that in very important in just a little bit. And so what happens is, this all starts with being the fact that all mammals are born vaginally, right? Mammals are born vaginally, right? Mammals, when you have baby going through the birth canal, so especially human being, when we go through the birth canal, that first swab of the bacteria in the vaginal canal is what inoculates us and gives us that probiotic. So about 30% of the human population is born C-section. So you have 30% of the population that doesn't get that initial swab, doesn't get that vaginal birth that get them to get inoculated with probiotic, which is so important for your immune function. And then once that happens is then you get breastfed, right? Breastfeeding is so important because when you have to realize that the breastfeeding is when the mother is giving the immune system to the baby, okay? Now the breastfeeding process what happens is there are these immunoglobulins. Immunoglobulins are immune proteins. Okay, that's what this immunoglobulin. This is a very large molecule. It doesn't typically squeeze through this tight gap right here. Okay, so what happens is all mammals, turns out, are born with leaky gut. All mammals, including humans, are born with leaky gut. Why? Because babies don't have an immune system. They rely on the mother to give them an immune system. And this process actually starts from day one when you're born with vaginal birth to get swab of that, that bacteria in the vaginal canal to inoculate a baby with these good bacteria. And then through breastfeeding, these immunoglobulins have to be able to get through the tight junction and get into your circulation. Well, if your gut was completely intact and not leaky, you will not be able to absorb the immunoglobulins from your mother's milk. So all mammals are born with leaky gut, and what happens is at about age 1.5, then the gut's completely sealed up and we have normal tight junctions where we don't have this leaky gut scenario. But know that all mammals are born with leaky gut. And furthermore, throughout life, we actually have times and periods where we just normally would develop leaky gut as a normal process. When would that happen? One example is when you have an infection. So this study, the study has done through Dr. Alessio Fasano. Dr. Fasano is a medical doctor. He's a gastroenterologist, a researcher at University of Maryland. He's done the most research on gluten sensitivity and leaky gut. He's basically the gluten sensitivity, leaky gut researcher. And basically what he has found in studying cholera is a bacterial infection where you get severe diarrhea, usually from drinking dirty water. Usually, in third world countries you get this. But cholera is a bacteria, so I'm going to draw this bacteria here. Looks like a cockroach. Let's just say it's a bug. Okay, cholera is a bacteria, but let's just say it looks like a bug. Turns out that on your cell surface of your intestine, these epithelial cells, you have a receptor. Okay, this receptor is like an antenna. It's like a door. And what happens is the cholera can actually attach to these epithelial cell receptors. And what happens is when they attach to these receptors, what happens is that'll trigger the DNA, because inside your cell, every single cell in your body, you have DNA. So DNA. And DNA's job is to make proteins. And what they'll do is when this cholera attached to this receptor, then your DNA is going to make another protein called zonulin. Zonulin is a protein that will go ahead and stimulate this muscle tissue to start to contract. And when that does, this space gets pulled apart. That's your leaky gut right there. That's your intestinal permeability. They say, why would the intestine do that? Why would your body cause this contraction? This is your body's own process. Why would the body cause leaky gut? Well, it turns out when you open this space up, what happens is you have these cells called the dendritic cells. These are immune cells that basically survey the environment. They're like the bouncer, okay? That's basically keeping watch on this tight junction right here. They're the bouncer that's watching what's coming through the intestine. And what happens is when this gut opens up, then this cholera, this bacteria, will actually start to get pulled toward the tight junction. And the dendritic cells, these guys, they will go ahead and grab it. They'll grab the cholera and actually pull it through. So now the cholera is going to be inside your bloodstream. Why? Because that's where your immune system actually is. That's where your white blood cells are. That's where your natural killer cells are. So we have these immune cells. Your natural killer cells. They will start to attack the cholera and kill it. So you see, when you have an infection, that's one mechanism for causing leaky gut, because this infection will attach onto the receptor. Your body will start to make zonulin, which causes leaky gut. That allows these large molecules or bugs to get through to the tight junction, which is now enlarged, allowing these things to get through. And the bouncer will grab the bad guy and pull it into the circulation where all the cops are, and it's going to just beat it to death and kill it. This is how your body works. So leaky gut is not a bad thing. It's actually an immune response. Leaky gut is a normal process if you have an infection. But what happens if you have an infection all the time, or major infection, gastroenteritis, which is really bad, diarrhea, really bad infection? Well, you're going to have this leaky gut process that may be more amplified or more prolonged, longer than it should. And that can actually start to cause this permeability issue, and that can just stay that way, and that's not good. So how does that relate to gluten sensitivity? Here's gluten. Let me use another color. Oh, looks like I have blood. Let me pull the caps off here. So here's gluten. Check it out, okay? So we have gluten molecule. Turns out the gluten molecule is also massively large. Gluten is a very large molecule, okay? This protein normally, again, does not squeeze through the tight junction. Normally, it cannot get through. Turns out that gluten, through Dr. Fasano's, did I say Fasan? Fasano, okay? This gluten molecule can attach to the same receptor on this epithelial cell, just like cholera does. That's the thing that he discovered, is that gluten can bind to the receptor and trigger the same zonulin to be released that'll cause this contraction and cause leaky gut. So gluten, in essence, does the same thing as what an infection would do or toxicity would do in triggering this immune response. So remember, leaky gut in itself is not bad. We all have leaky gut. Our gut is constantly leaky, not leaky. Leaky, not leaky. It's like a valve that controls what comes through, depends on the situation. So gluten triggers the same response as like cholera would or infection, and triggers the zonulin to be released, which stimulates this actin, which is the muscle tissue, to create leaky gut. And now what happens is this gluten molecule will get pulled through the tight junction, and now it's going to be in circulation. And what your body does is you have what's called a Th1 and Th2 immune system. You have T helper 1 and T helper 2. The T helper 1 system is your natural killer cells, right? It's your killer cells. It's the stuff that kills, your killer cells, which is there to protect you. They're like this Navy SEALs of your immune system. They're going to protect you. And you have the Th2 system, which make antibodies. Okay? Antibody is your immune system putting a tag on the bad guy, so the next time when your immune system see the bad guy again, it can launch a response faster. This is a normal response. And what happens is, when this gluten molecule, remember the purple is gluten, when this gluten molecule is here, there's gluten, then what happens is your immune system will make antibody against gluten. So now you have gliadin, which is a type of gluten molecule. There are actually 50-some different gluten molecule, with gliadin being one. There's alpha gliadin, omega gliadin, alpha beta gliadin, glutenin. There's all different types. But now you started making this complex called the gliadin antibody. And what happens is your immune system basically seeing this gluten as a bad guy, as an infection. So next time when you eat gluten again, your immune system is going to see, oh, I recognize this guy, it's not good for me, it's going to attack that again. And that's going to create your inflammation. So that's why gluten sensitivity can trigger leaky gut, but it can also trigger inflammation. Now know that there's no such thing as a local inflammation. Like when you bang your elbow, yeah, your elbow's going to swell up, but guess what? That inflammation, it's going to travel by blood. Every time your heart beats, it squirts that blood throughout your body. That inflammation that's here, that you bang your elbow, it's going to spread throughout your own body. So there's no such thing as local inflammation. You may have a local manifestation or a local foci of inflammation, but there's no such thing as local inflammation. So inflammation is going to be systemic because it's going to travel by blood. So now you have this gliadin antibody, and every time your heart beats, it's just pushing that blood out, and then the gliadin antibody is traveling throughout your body, and it's going to trigger systemic inflammation. So last week when I did a poll, people were asking, why do I have so much inflammation? It could potentially because you have leaky gut, and gluten could be a potential trigger. But guess what? gluten is not the only thing that can do that. There's other food that can do that as well, but gluten is definitely one of the main triggers or known trigger of leaky gut. And that's why we do a test to identify this on lab work so we can get a baseline to see how leaky is your gut. And is it leaky because it's damaged at a tight junction where this gap is damaged, right? Or is it damaged because the cells are damaged right here? You can have damage right through here. So you can have leaky gut where the molecule is leaking through the gap, tight junction, or you can have leaky gut where the molecule is leaking through the cell. So there's different ways that can happen, and that help us to identify the mechanism or the root cause. Okay, so now, guess what? It doesn't stop there. Because what happens is, when you have leaky gut, especially if you have these bacterial infections, what happens is you can have these zonulin protein started leaking into your blood as well. And what happened when the zonulin protein started to leak into the blood because of this leaky gut and damage that happens, then your antibody system, you can start to make antibody against that. So now we may have what's called a zonulin antibody. Again, this is what's measured on the lab test that we order. This is a test that your regular doctors don't order because they have no clue how to fix it. Because there's no drug for it. It's not that they have no clue. They might have heard of how to fix that, but they don't really care because in a medical model, their job is to give you drug and surgery. And unfortunately, there's no drug and no surgery for leaky gut. And this leaky gut situation is not something you can see on colonoscopy and endoscopy. So don't tell me that. I've been to my GI doc. They said I don't have any gut issue. It doesn't mean you don't have leaky gut. Colonoscopy and endoscopy, just a camera down your gut to look for any ulcerations and bleeding and tumor. It does not see things on the microscopic level. So colonoscopy and endoscopy does not rule out leaky gut. And remember, most medical doctors either don't know what leaky gut is or they don't care. Your homework is look up intestinal permeability on PubMed and tell me how many citations. There you go, Razvan. You arrive at the right answer. Everybody else, look it up yourself. Look it up. Don't just trust somebody else, right? Look it up here. So if there's more than 10,000 citations on intestinal permeability, and your doctor don't know about it, I don't know. Is that malpractice? Certainly that's negligent by not knowing some mechanism that can cause autoimmune disease. And they don't talk about it. It's a mechanism that can cause arthritis or inflammation in your body or brain inflammation causing brain fog. And I mean, certainly that's a mechanism you have to look at when there's 13,000 plus citations on. Okay? So now you have the zonulin antibody. What happens is you have your immune system start to recognizing your own tissue as the bad guy now. So when you have this, and this is no different than people with Hashimoto's. When you have Hashimoto's disease, this is a thyroid autoimmune disease where you have TPO antibody, right? This is how you test for Hashimoto on blood tests. You test for antibody against TPO enzyme, which is an enzyme found in your thyroid gland. So if your immune system is developing antibody to this thyroid tissue, that means your immune system is starting to see your own tissue as the bad guy. It's attacking it. Well, this process can start with this. Because now you have this antibody against self-tissue, and this can circulate in your blood, and now your body is going to start to react to that particular tissue. And this can actually start to trigger a cascade of autoimmune and inflammatory responses. Now, so know that when this gluten antibody, why this gluten sensitivity is related to so many autoimmune disease. This is the last thing I'm going to finish with, and this is the biggest point about why people develop multiple autoimmunity. Now that you have the gliadin antibody, this gluten bound to an antibody, right? This gluten antibody is going to circulate through blood, like I said, go systemic. There's no such thing as local inflammation. There's systemic inflammation. This gluten antibody is going to travel by blood. If this gluten antibody ends up in your pancreas, and this gluten antibody can actually bind to the beta cells in your pancreas, the beta cells secrete insulin. If this gluten body starts a complex with the beta cells in your pancreas, then your immune system is going to start to see, oh, the beta cells in your pancreas looks like gluten, which looks like cholera, looks like a bad guy, then your immune system is going to start to develop autoimmunity, immune system attack against pancreas. That's your type 1 diabetes. Type 1 autoimmune diabetes or your juvenile diabetes. But you can have type 1.5, which is latent adult onset autoimmune diabetes, which is not juvenile. So you can have autoimmune diabetes that's not onset at childhood. You can have it as an adult where your immune system started attacking your pancreas and you get autoimmune diabetes. If this gluten complex travels to, say, your cerebellum, which is a part of your brain that controls balance and coordination, and your immune system started seeing the cerebellum tissue, hey, this looks a lot like this, and they do. Because the protein sequence of cerebellum tissue looks very similar to gluten protein sequence. So the immune system only can recognize protein sequences. They basically read codes. And when they see the protein sequence cerebellum, it looks very similar to the gluten, it's going to start attack the cerebellum thinking it's just like gluten. Now you have cerebellum autoimmunity. What does that look like? That's where people get ataxia. That means you have balance problem, you may have vertigo issues, you have this drunkenness where you walk like you're drunk but you would never drink any alcohol. So if you feel like, I feel like I'm drunk but I never drank anything, you may have cerebellar ataxia as a consequence of gluten sensitivity and autoimmunity. So the bottom line is this autoimmune mechanism of gluten sensitivity and leaky gut can trigger multiple autoimmunes, which are pancreas, cerebellum, but could be to other tissue as well. And thyroid, Hashimoto, is known to gluten sensitivity, and Hashimoto is very closely related. Now the thing is, it's not that difficult to cut out gluten. It's pretty easy to go gluten-free, okay? But how easy is it to go thyroid-free? You know what I mean? Like you can go gluten-free, but if your immune system is already starting to attack the thyroid gland, like how do you not have thyroid tissue in your body? Oh, you can surgically remove it. But guess what? Once you turn on the autoimmune gene, your immune system, because it's due to leaky gut, your immune system, once you have this leaky gut and autoimmune process where your immune system is upregulated, is stimulated, overstimulated, it'll start to attack multiple tissues in the body because it's systemic. It doesn't just go one place. So you can cut out gluten, but once you become autoimmune, then gluten can be a trigger. However, you need to look for other triggers as well. Other trigger may be infections, toxicities, and you also need to heal the gut. If you don't heal the gut, you're going to constantly having immune system flare-ups, inflammation, flare-up of your inflammation. If you have autoimmune disease, you're going to have autoimmune flare-ups. And remember, autoimmune flare-up is not necessarily pain. People think inflammation is pain. Inflammation is not just manifested as pain. Inflammation depends on what tissue is affecting. It's going to show up in the area. If you have inflammation in your brain, the symptom will be brain fog, fatigue, depression, anxiety, not pain. If you have inflammation in your thyroid, you don't have pain. You just feel tired, you gain weight, your hair falls out, right? So it's not pain. People think inflammation is pain. You got to think this is a systemic issue. So the way to address this is, again, it's a holistic thing. You must remove antigenic foods that you may have reaction to. You must seal up the gut lining using specific nutritional protocols. Vitamin D is one. L-glutamine is another. Deglycerized licorice can help. Glutathione really helps. So there's a lot of different compounds, and we have a link that you can opt in to get a free eating plan to help with this leaky gut. And you can get it at AskDrKan.com/gut repair, and it's been out for a while. It's one of our highly requested, free information for you, just to help you. My goal is to help you and help your friends and family and the ones you love who may be suffering from chronic condition. I'm sick and tired of people being sick and not getting the right answers, despite their efforts, despite what their doctor's telling them. I'm sick and tired of it. Okay, so help me help more people by spreading this message, by sharing this video, by liking our Facebook page and subscribing to our YouTube channel. I'll put all the links here. All you got to do is just share it. And if you do that, you're going to help a lot of people toward knowing the truth about their health and knowing how to get there. Okay, so hopefully this helps you. Please put your answers to this question. How many citations do you see? And also put your questions in the comment section and share and like this video. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you next week.